Long Fallen Dynasty has had a demo release earlier today. Actually, yesterday, because most likely I'm going to be releasing this tomorrow. Confused? Don't worry too much about it. The important part is that there is a demo available. Unfortunately, this demo is only available on consoles. In this case, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X, and S. So if you own one of those consoles and you want to check out Long Fallen Dynasty, you can now go to the store and download the demo and check it out for yourself. Now, when this demo was announced, I basically rushed home to pick up my PlayStation 5 because I did wanted to check out this game, because this game comes from the same studio that brought us Nioh and Nioh 2. It comes from Team Ninja, published by Koei Tecmo, and it seems to be somewhat in the same vein as Nioh. Some people are already calling it Nioh 3, but that's neither here nor there. So I grabbed that, I set up for a stream, and I streamed the entirety of the demo, which you can find my first playthrough of the demo in the channel if you are curious. About a 3-hour and change stream. And basically, I spent a large portion of that stream screaming in rage and frustration as I was making my way through the demo. This is the reason why my voice probably sounds a little bit more spent than usual. And you guys know what that means. It means it's probably going to be a really good time when I actually play the game when it comes out in 2023. Now, you guys might be wondering, Rurikhan, why were you raging in frustration? It's because, sometimes you get frustrated, and usually when it comes to these demos, at least in my personal opinion, when it comes to demos of Nioh and Nioh 2, they tend to spruce up the bosses a little bit, make them a little bit more challenging than the stuff you encounter in the game. At least from my experience with previous Nioh titles, I always found the demos a lot more difficult than the game itself, not to mention the fact that you have to kind of adapt back to that control scheme, and that also takes a while. So there was some frustration there, and basically I never really hold my emotions back when I'm in a stream. It's like, hey, if I'm mad, I'm going to say that I'm mad. But on top of it, there is one problem currently with the demo, and that is a mechanic called the summoning beast, whatever. So there's a beast that is associated with your character, kind of like whatever that mechanic was called in Nioh. I forget what the name of it was. Magic weapon in Nioh 1, I think. And then in Nioh 2 was something else. Basically, you summon a creature. You guys remember what I'm talking about, right? If you've played Nioh 1 and 2, you'll be familiar with a mechanic like this. That mechanic is also present in Long, but for some strange reason in the demo, the inputs aren't working correctly, which leads to some really frustrating situations. But anyways, before we dive back into that was just to explain to you guys why I ended up screaming so much. Before we dive into that, let's actually talk about the game itself. You guys are now watching gameplay of my second run-through of the demo, which, by the way, took considerably less amount of time because, with these games, once you start getting used to the controls, once you start getting used to how, the game plays, where the enemies are and all of that stuff, it's just a lot faster. So my second run of the demo took about an hour, and I still killed the final boss. So I killed the final boss of this demo twice, which is significantly challenging, but still not really that big a deal once you master the combat a little bit, at least better than what I did in the live stream. But I feel like in a live stream environment, things are usually happen to be a little bit different. But anyways, let's talk about it from the visual standpoint, because that's usually how I start my first impressions videos. The visuals actually surprised me. I feel like it looks a little bit better than what I would have expected for Nioh, which I kind of feel like when it comes to Nioh, you have great gameplay, but the visuals do end up looking a little bit dated. This is just my opinion. You guys feel free to disagree in the comment section. Just try to be civil about it. But the visuals surprised me in the positive. I think they look good. The animations also looked very good. There's a lot of detail in the stuff that you get to do in this game, even though sometimes there are a couple of things here and there. Like I felt initially when I saw the character run, even though my eyes eventually adapted to it, but the first time I saw the character run, I felt like the character is moving slower than what the animation conveys. Let me know if you guys felt the same way, but that was pretty much the biggest criticism that I have for the animations. I feel like from a visual standpoint, this is actually a significant improvement from what we've come to expect from Nioh. But again, my opinion, let me know how you guys feel about it. In terms of sound, I felt that the sound was pretty good. Not really a whole lot to point out there. In terms of the level design, there's one major shortcut in this level that I can remember. There are these checkpoints that you get along the way in the form of flags, which actually affect the major system in the game, which is morale. Now, morale, which I'm not exactly sure if this is going to be the final name of this system. Morale is a system where basically the more enemies you kill, the more powerful you become through the fact that, your character is now empowered by the fact, oh yeah, I feel like a badass because I've killed all these dudes. So that happens, which is interesting, and as you are navigating through the level, the enemies also have a certain amount of morale. Higher morale enemies are going to be significantly tougher to face than enemies that have morale lower than you, and this is really important. Like, you might think about, oh, maybe I'll level up and all of these things. In reality, at least in the demo, one of the most important things was hands down your morale level. So basically dying is a really big penalty in this game because you also end up losing morale. Now, not everything is super bad because, like I said, there is this checkpoint system in the game. There are these small flags and big flags. Big flags essentially act like bonfires, so you can rest on them, you can level up, you can set spells, you can do all of these different things. These smaller flags act more like just minor checkpoints. But the thing is, whenever you place a flag on the map, you improve your what are they called? Fortification? I forget. Fortitude. You improve your fortitude, and your fortitude basically sets a baseline for your morale. So say, for instance, you increase your fortitude to 7. Whenever you die, the lowest your morale gets is 7. So planting these flags is going to be key in order to reduce the difficulty of each of these levels. If you feel like, challenging yourself, you can choose not to plant these checkpoint flags, and the game is going to be significantly harder for those of you that are looking for more of a challenge. I think this is a cool mechanic because basically it allows you to decide for yourself what type of difficulty you are engaging in, so that whenever we have the journalists come around and start saying, oh my god, Wolong needs an easy mode, although, I don't remember them doing that a whole lot with Nioh, so maybe they won't. Maybe they only do that with From Software games because they're a little bit more popular. But if they do end up doing that, you can tell them, hey, dumbass, use the flag system, improve your morale, all right? Also, maybe learn how to play the game a little bit before asking for an easy mode, because for all the raging and moaning that I did in my live stream, not at one point did I ask for an easy mode, because I understood that a big portion was I still hadn't figured out the combat yet, which is going to take, I feel like, a significant amount of time for people to understand. The tutorial that is in the demo basically just unloads a whole bunch of mechanics onto you and expects you to memorize them, which is a little bit frustrating. But, it's the usual thing when it comes to Japanese games. I hope that they do a little bit of a better tutorial in the final game just to ease the ramp up for new players that might want to try and enter this genre, but, not really a big turn-off, so to speak. Once you get used to the basic mechanics, square light attack, triangle, heavy attack, that type of thing. Even though in this game, triangle is not really heavy attack, it's called spirit attack. You guys are wondering, okay, so what's a spirit attack? That's because this game, besides the morale system, which is an interesting system in and of itself that makes you more and more powerful as you defeat more enemies, like we talked about, but also weaker and weaker as you get defeated. And by the way, actually, before we dive into the spirit system, there's a very interesting thing happening with morale, which is when an enemy kills you, that enemy gains morale and he becomes more powerful. And then if you kill him, you get a revenge thing, which I think gives you additional, resources and stuff like that. I actually don't know what revenge does now that I think about it, but I got a whole lot of revenges for myself because that was fun. So it's an interesting system where basically, enemies that kill you get more powerful, and then you're more incentivized to go there and kill them, get your revenge. Also, you get revenge for other players. I didn't engage too much with the multiplayer because I usually tend to play these games solo to begin with. But when other players get killed by monsters, they may end up in your world, and then you kill them, and it says, "Oh, you avenged player X," and it shows a message in their thing indicating that, "Oh, player X has avenged you," because I've seen messages from other players indicating that they had avenged me as well. So the morale system pretty cool. Let's talk about the spirit system, because there is no stamina in this game. Now, usually when it comes to these games, you are used to having like a stamina gauge, a health gauge, the whole thing. This game has a spirit system. So how does the spirit system work? It's actually somewhat similar to the posture gauge in Sekiro, if you guys remember that. The difference is that it kind of goes both ways. So how does this work? When you are attacking an enemy, if you're landing hits, then your spirit is going to start going towards the right, towards the blue side. This is a good thing. It means, oh, you are kind of dominating the battle. And you'll notice that the spirit of the enemies is going to be going towards the right side, which is orange. So there's two colors to spirit. Blue, good. Orange, bad. You don't want to be an orange. If your enemies aren't orange, though, that's really good, because if you hit your enemies enough times and you basically break their posture by taking their spirit max to orange, basically you get to do what is, what we know here as visceral attacks, like, the super attacks that you get to do with the big stabbies. You guys know what I'm talking about, like a finisher move, right? So you want to make sure that you stay with your spirit in the blue and you put the enemy spirit in the orange as much as you can. Now, obviously, this works to the enemy's favor as well. So if the enemies hit you, they go into the blue and they start dealing more damage and stuff like that. And you go into the orange, it feels terrible. Whenever you go into the orange, it feels terrible because you don't have a stamina system, so you're probably thinking to yourself, oh, I can just spam dodge then. It's not really a problem. No, because dodging costs spirit. Everything in this game, every single action is associated with spirit, which is why you have square as your basic attack. That's fine. You can spam that as much as you want. But if you go for triangle, that also costs spirit, which is why it's called a spirit attack. But it allows you to do these really cool, powerful attacks. So the idea here is that you hit the enemies multiple times, get your spirit to blue, and then use triangle to spend some of that blue spirit to deal massive amounts of damage to the enemy. You even get these special orange looking attacks that deal additional damage and additional spirit damage and all of that. And I'm pretty sure that there's going to be specific specs that you'll be able to do that will be better at managing the spirit gauge and so on and so forth. I haven't really looked too much into the stats. We'll talk about those very briefly here. But yeah, that's kind of like the basics of the spirit gauge. Also, whenever an enemy successfully breaks your gauge, it means that your character is basically incapacitated. And also your character just starts getting all kinds of sluggish when you spend too much time on orange. Now, one of the cool things that you can do if you are struggling in a fight is you can run, because run is not affected by spirit. As a matter of fact, you can run and even regenerate a little bit of spirit. Running, by the way, as you press down on L3, it's not really holding circle or anything like that. So, running is a way that you can kind of get around whenever you have really, really low spirit and you're just taking a beat down. You can kind of just run around a little bit, try to organize yourself. But there's usually limited space in order to counterbalance that. It's not like, oh, let me just run to the start of the level. Even though during the stream I had a pretty interesting situation where basically I killed a really tough mini-boss by running back and he fell off a cliff. And I was like, great, I approve of this. Perfect tactics. I then went back and I eventually killed him. So don't worry too much about me cheesing through the whole game, okay? I killed him eventually. Don't you worry too much about that. Now, so that is kind of like the basics of how the spirit gauge system works. Hopefully you guys understood that part. So spirit system, special attacks. What else have we got? Well, obviously there's backstabs. The way that you do backstabs, you sneak up behind enemies. There isn't a dedicated sneak button, or if there is, I couldn't really find it. So the idea is you just inch the analog stick forward as opposed to just pulling it full throttle towards the enemies. And it's kind of tricky because if you're locked on, because there's obviously a lock on, as most of the Souls games, it's R3. Because if you're locked on, sometimes an enemy might, walk past you or in a weird way and your character moves a little bit fast. I kind of feel like they might need to adjust how much of the stick you need to push in order to go into a run, in order to prevent you from, in order to make it a little bit easier for you to kind of do stealth kills. Unless you're like, no, but I want it to be hard. Sure, I get being hard, but sometimes holding the stick just a little bit to the forward, a millimeter, I just feel like there could be a little bit more leeway there for intent. I don't think it needs to be hard. It's oh, I want to walk. I mean, I don't even know how they're going to translate this to a keyboard, but probably it's just going to be a key that you press. So if it's going to be that easy on keyboard, there's no reason for it to be that challenging on controller. At least in my opinion. And like I said, it's not like it's super hard. It's just it doesn't feel that it's quite there. At least I'm hoping that that is something that they can improve on, but that's just my thoughts on that particular thing. But basically you sneak up on an enemy, you press triangle, and you're going to get to do a backstab. You can also do aerial type visceral attacks. So if an enemy hasn't seen you yet, you can jump from above and you can stab them in the face and deal a ton of damage. The gameplay that you guys are watching is going to be from a specific element that is more about being sneaky and backstabby and all of that stuff, which is why you'll probably see me sneaking around quite a bit and trying to get backstabs and aerial assassinations on most of the enemies that I'm fighting. That's because that's the strength of that build that I'm playing right now. So while we're talking about this, let's talk about the different stats this game has. So this game only has like 5 stats, and the stats are each associated to an element. So there's the fire stat, the wood stat, I think. Well, I guess wood's not really an element, but you know, it was fire, wood, I think there's earth, there is definitely water, which is the one that you guys are watching right now. And there's another one that I forget what the name is. I don't remember if it's wind or not, but you know, there's like 5 major stats, and each of these stats has an influence as to how you play your character, but it also is the stat that is going to be the main stat of a certain weapon type. So for instance, the dual katanas that I'm using here, they scale off of the water stat. The water stat also makes it harder for enemies to detect you, which is why this is kind of like the stealthy assassin type of character, right? The first character that I played was actually the wood stat. The reason I was using that one is because wood is about support, so I would be able to buff other people in multiplayer. But most importantly, I just wanted to test out the different buffs, and I like the weapon that thing came with, which is the Chinese iron sword, which I tend to like those swords, so I went for that. And I really like that one. I actually think that wood is the one that I like the most. I might have to test the other ones, but basically each of these has like different things. So like I said, wood is about support. You get to do AoE buffs, so in case you're playing in co-op, you get to buff the other players. And these buffs are actually really good. Like there's a buff that gives you lifesteal. So the more damage you deal, the more life you start stealing from enemies. It's not broken overpowered, like if they hit you, you're still going to take a significant chunk, but you can kind of like heal yourself over the course of multiple hits. It's right on the brink between, you know, feeling too powerful and feeling just about right. So I was like, okay, this is good. This is good enough. There's another buff in there, like you could enchant your weapon with lightning. And then there's tons of buffs that you can apply to yourself. There's also spells, actual spells, like you can shoot lightning with the thing that with the wood specialty. With the water one, you could shoot like these icicles, which I didn't really like that much. There's also AoE spells that you can do. And yeah, depending on your element, they're going to do different things. So like I said, the green was for buffs and stuff. Blue was for stealth. The red one was just like all-out offense. So they tell you all of this at the start of the game in case you guys end up playing the demo. It should be fairly easy to understand. But I like the way that they do that because each armor piece that you get is going to give you, might give you one of those stats, which then allows you to increase the damage that you deal with each of the weapons. Each weapon, like I said, is going to be associated with each of the stats. So the iron sword goes for wood. The dual katanas go for water. I forget which ones go for fire. I think it's the regular katana goes for fire. So yeah, there's all of this stuff, the kind of stuff that you expect from a Souls game. But each of these stats also affects you in a different way. So wood increases your hit points and increases something about the spirit gauge. Water increases the difficulty to detect you. Fire increases, just straight up increases the damage that you deal in melee. So, you know, you can kind of figure out which build you want to play based on this stat. You can also assign different stats and just have like a multi-stat type of build instead of focusing all on one. And you guys know how this stuff traditionally works, right? So we talked about the magic, the different magics that you have. There's also these special attacks that you can do. This is actually something that I wasn't a big fan of, because these attacks had like a reasonable wind-up. So basically these would be press R1 and like square or triangle, and it would give you a different special attack. And these particular attacks, I felt like the risk-reward was just not there, because they didn't deal that much damage. It could have been because of the builds that I was playing. Like I said, I played the assassin type build and I played the support type build, so maybe those builds just don't benefit as much from these attacks. But I just felt like they were really weak and that I could do better by just using the basic attacks with the spirit attacks and managing the spirit gauge appropriately. But that was just my overall assessment of those. Again, my mind could be changed later when I actually get to play the full game, because like another thing is the game is spruced up a little bit. It is meant, they are balancing the demo to be a little bit more challenging than the final game is going to be. If my Nioh experience tells me anything, is that is going to be the case. But you know, that was kind of like my overall experience. So now You get the other mechanic that I didn't talk about was summoning the beasts. So summoning the beasts is each of these elements is going to have one beast associated with it. Maybe in the final game there will be more beasts associated with the different elements, but you're not locked into it. So you can be playing like the water type build, which is the assassin build, and actually use the green summon, which is a healing summon and is extremely powerful. Like basically when I was inside the green summon, I was immortal. I might as well be invincible because it heals so friggin' much. They might have to balance that a little bit because I did use it as an invincibility tool, essentially. But maybe that's intended. I'm not 100% sure. Maybe that's intended because that build just doesn't deal as much damage as the other builds. So I don't actually know. But fundamentally, these creatures, there's a separate gauge for them. And as you are engaging in combat with your enemies and all of that, this gauge starts building up, and then you can use it pretty much like the living weapon or whatever in Nioh 1 and whatever it was called in Nioh 2, I forget. And when you use that, you get the big bonus. Now, I only used 2 of those, which was the healing one, and then I used the water one. The water one summons this turtle that spits ice at your enemies. Here's another thing. Whenever you have like an elemental buff on your weapon, the enemies actually get staggered when you fill the threshold. So there's a little threshold that starts forming as you attack the enemies. It's very easy to hit this, by the way. And whenever you hit the threshold, the enemies kind of like get stunned a little bit. And then they get the debuff. And while the debuff is there, you can't stun them again. But it gives you openings on enemies to enchant your weapons. So like I enchanted it with lightning, enemies will get stunned. The thing that I thought was weird was regardless of what I enchanted the weapon with, the effect always was that enemies got stunned. I'm not sure if this was just for the demo and then for the final game it might actually do something different from that. But yeah, that's what we ended up getting for the demo for now. Oh yeah, before I forget, I talked so much about combat and almost neglected to talk about a key feature, which is deflection. Now, this game has a dodge system like I talked about previously. Whenever you dodge, it uses up your spirit, so you have to use it sparingly in combat, otherwise you're going to end up in the red with your spirit, and then the enemies are going to crucify you. But another thing that Wo Long wants you to do is they want you to dodge at the very last second. Whenever you successfully do this, your character is going to perform a deflection. Now, the severity of your deflection is going to depend on the attack that you are deflecting. So if it's just a regular attack that you are deflecting from the enemy, then your character kind of rolls through the attack. It does a little spinning thing. You hear a little swing, and it's basically a parry for all intents and purposes, and your character positions himself in a good spot for a counterattack in most situations, okay? If the attack that you parried, however, was like a major attack that the enemy was doing, sometimes enemies will glow red, indicating like, oh, a big attack is coming. And if you are able to successfully deflect that, then your character usually performs a major counterattack that gives you a massive opening to inflict damage. And let me tell you, from my experience with the last boss of this demo, you're going to want to master the deflection mechanic in this game because it does give you massive openings, allows you to break posture a lot more easily whenever it comes to these big bosses. It's just a really, really important mechanic, which reminds me to tell you that if you are someone that traditionally struggles with parry timings and stuff like that, you are probably going to have a rough time playing Wo Long. So keep that in mind. At least from my limited experience with the demo, like I said, I played it with 2 different characters. And in those 2 different characters, if I didn't land the, the deflections on the final boss, I was probably not going to be able to kill the final boss at all because the openings that these deflections provided were beyond massive. It was completely insane. So keep that in mind if you are somebody that does struggle with the parry mechanics. Now, there is a character that I haven't played yet, which is the Earth Element, which is supposedly the more tanky character, so to speak. But I'm not sure if you're going to be able to tank through the hits that I saw on that boss. So this is just my thoughts on it, and you can take it or leave it. And now you might be wondering, okay, so Rurikhan, so after all of this, how was your experience? I actually enjoyed it, and I know that there's going to be people that are going to be watching this stream and you're going to think, oh, he's not enjoying it. He's like, look at how upset he is. He's mad. And yeah, I was mad because of the beast thing, like really pissed me off because there were multiple opportunities that I had to basically kill the final boss. And when I went to summon the beast, the game said no. But that's probably going to be fixed before the game comes out, so that really shouldn't be a problem. But that was one of the things that really frustrated me. The other thing was just getting used to the controls was very frustrating. But once you got used to it, like I said, my second run of the demo was less than one third of the time of my actual stream. So once you get used to it, and maybe the pressure of having the stream on and all of that also contributes to being a little bit more frustrated. But like, once you get used to it and you don't have the pressure of being on a stream and whatnot, I think that the gameplay is really enjoyable. I think the game is actually going to be a lot of fun. But I do feel like they still have some improvements to do. Like I said, maybe a little bit of work on the animations. They're probably going to be balancing the difficulty a little bit better. And definitely fix that friggin' beast summon thing. But apart from that, like, I think it's just going to be a really enjoyable game to jump into. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it when it eventually releases. And initially I wasn't sure if I was going to. I do feel like I might be getting a little bit too old for these games. My reflexes are not what they used to be anymore. But, you know, as the old iron breaker that I am, I'm going to be here smashing my face against everything that video games throw at me for the foreseeable future. At least I hope so. At least that is my desire. But we shall see if that pans out or not. But yeah, those are my thoughts on Long Fallen Dynasty. I think it's going to be a good time. But let me know how you guys feel about it. If you guys played the demo, if you did not play the demo, if you watched the stream. Like, what would you think about the game? What did you think about the gameplay that you watched in this video? Like, let me know in the comment section down below. Thank you all very much for watching. I really do mean it. I appreciate each and every one of you that watches my videos and allows me to continue to do this. Like I always say, I don't take any of this for granted. So, thank you. I'll see you guys in the next one. If you guys enjoyed this, hit the like button, subscribe, bell notification icon, all of that jazz. I might be working on a video for Valkyria Elysium as well, because I do want to check that out, but I'm probably not going to be streaming that one, but we'll see. But anyways, I'll see you guys in the next one. Stay strong, stay safe, peace out.